The bouquet of wild magnolias trembled in Harper's hands as the church bells tolled their final mocking peal. Empty pews stretched like forgotten promises under the stained glass glow, and in the vestry mirror her reflection stared back. A bride unclaimed, veil askew, lipstick smudged from silent sobs. "They were here yesterday," she whispered to the empty air, the words dissolving into the scent of wilted petals, as if her family's vanishing could be undone by the sheer force of her unraveling heart. In the humid haze of a North Carolina summer, the old Ellis family home on the outskirts of Wilmington had always been a sanctuary of creaking porches and salt-kissed air. Harper had grown up chasing fireflies across the lawn with her sister Lydia, their laughter mingling with the distant crash of waves from the Cape Fear River. Their mother, Eleanor, with her silver-streaked hair and hands callous from tending heirloom roses, had woven stories of enduring love into every supper, tales of grandmothers who braved hurricanes for the ones they cherished. And their father, Thomas, a quiet carpenter whose workshop smelled of pine shavings and possibility, had built Harper's childhood treehouse with beams strong enough to hold dreams. But dreams, Harper learned that morning, could splinter like dry wood under the weight of unspoken truths. The wedding was to be at St. Augustine's Chapel, a clapboard relic from the 1800s, its spire piercing the live oak canopy like a fragile arrow to the sky. Riley, Harper's fiancé, had chosen the venue for its unpretentious grace, whitewashed walls etched with the ghosts of Confederate whispers, but reborn now as a place for vows that defied old shadows. Riley Donovan, with her sharp wit and Portland-bred edge, had flown in from the Pacific Northwest 2 weeks earlier, her dark curls framing a face that lit with mischief whenever she teased Harper about her Southern belle stubbornness. They had met 3 years prior in a Charlottesville bookstore, Harper shelving poetry while Riley browsed for dog-eared copies of Carson McCullers. One shared glance over the heart is a lonely hunter, and the world had tilted, pulling them into a love that felt like sunlight filtering through storm clouds, warm, insistent, alive. But as dawn broke on the wedding day, the house was eerily still. Harper had risen early, her bare feet padding across the heart pine floors, expecting the clatter of Eleanor's coffee pot and Lydia's off-key humming from the kitchen. Instead, silence greeted her like a held breath. The dining table, set the night before with crystal from their grandmother's trousseau, stood abandoned. Suitcases gone from the hall closet. A single note on the counter in Eleanor's looping script. "We can't watch this, Harper. Forgive us when you can. Love always, Mom." No signatures from Thomas or Lydia. Just that hollow plea, as if the words could bridge the chasm their absence carved. Harper's chest tightened, a vice of betrayal squeezing the air from her lungs. She had known the rift simmered beneath their fragile peace. Whispers at Thanksgiving last year, when Riley's hand lingered too long on Harper's knee under the tablecloth. Thomas's averted eyes during their engagement call, his voice gruff with unspoken storms. Lydia's hesitant texts, laced with questions about that phase turning permanent. Harper had poured her soul into bridging it, late-night letters to Eleanor quoting Auden on love's quiet revolutions, drives with Thomas along the riverbank where she spoke of Riley's kindness, the way she mended broken things with steady hands. Even Lydia, the wild-hearted sister who had once dyed her hair rebel blue, had softened during a girls' weekend in Asheville, toasting to whatever makes you whole. Yet here they were, vanished like smoke from a snuffed candle. Harper stumbled to the porch, the screen door slapping shut behind her, and sank onto the swing that had cradled her childhood swings. The river murmured below, its surface a mirror of fractured light, reflecting the magnolia branches heavy with blooms. She clutched her phone, dialing Riley first, her voice cracking over the line. "They're gone. All of them. I can't breathe." Riley's cab screeched to a halt outside St. Augustine's an hour later, her bridesmaid's dress, a soft sage silk that echoed the marsh grasses, rumpled from the frantic drive. She found Harper in the vestry, curled on the floor amid scattered petals, veil tangled like a fisherman's net. Without a word, Riley knelt, drawing Harper into her arms, the scent of her cedarwood perfume a anchor in the whirlpool. "We'll find them," Riley murmured, her fingers tracing the curve of Harper's spine. "Or we'll build something new. But not like this. Not alone." The ceremony dissolved into a wake without the dead. Friends from Harper's Wilmington circle, nurses from the hospital where she coordinated community health outreach, artists from the local gallery, gathered in the churchyard, their murmurs a gentle tide against the void. Riley's brother from Portland, a lanky photographer named Finn, captured candid shots of toasts raised to absent shadows, his lens seeking slivers of light in the grief. But Harper moved through it like a ghost, her smile a brittle veneer, the weight of abandonment pressing like fog over the sound. That night in the rented cottage on Wrightsville Beach, the ocean's roar seeped through the open windows, a relentless lullaby. Harper lay awake, Riley's steady breathing beside her a reminder of the life they had pledged, even if the words remained unsaid. She traced the faint scar on Riley's collarbone, a remnant of a childhood fall from an Oregon apple tree, and wondered how love could feel so vast yet so insufficient against the ache of erasure. "What did I do wrong?" Harper whispered into the dark, her voice swallowed by the waves. Riley stirred, pulling her closer. "You loved fiercely. That's never wrong." Days blurred into a haze of unanswered calls and forwarded mail. The Ellis home, once brimming with the hum of family, echoed with Harper's solitary steps. She wandered its rooms like a curator of memories. The kitchen where Eleanor taught her to roll biscuit dough, flour dusting their laughter. Thomas's workshop, tools laid out like soldiers awaiting orders. Lydia's old bedroom, posters of indie bands curling at the edges. Each corner held a fragment of the life they had shared, now tainted by their flight. Harper sifted through drawers, finding half-read novels and pressed flowers, but no clues to their path. A bank statement showed withdrawals from coastal ATMs, Myrtle Beach then Charleston, but the trail went cold at the Georgia line. Riley extended her stay, trading Portland deadlines for sand-swept walks and midnight confessions. They drove the Outer Banks in Riley's borrowed Jeep, windows down to let the wind scour the silence. At Kitty Hawk, where the Wright brothers once defied gravity, Harper finally shattered. "They saw me, Riley. All those years they saw me loving you, and it wasn't enough." Tears carved paths through the salt on her cheeks as gulls wheeled overhead, their cries a chorus to her unraveling. Riley stopped the car, pulling her into the dunes, where sea oats whispered secrets to the breeze. "It was never about enough," Riley said, her voice steady as the tide. "It was their fear. And fear makes cowards of us all." In the quiet aftermath, Harper began to rebuild in fragments. She returned to work at the free clinic, her hands steady as she bandaged wounds that mirrored her own. Invisible, insistent. Patients like old Mr. Hargrove, with his tales of lost loves from the Korean War, reminded her that scars could soften with time. Evenings, she and Riley cooked on the porch, shrimp boils steaming under strings of fairy lights, the act a small rebellion against the emptiness. Yet the questions gnawed. Where had they gone? Why this final severance? Harper dreamed of them nightly. Eleanor's face dissolving into mist, Thomas's hammer strikes echoing like accusations, Lydia's hand slipping from hers mid-step. One rain-lashed afternoon, as thunder rolled over the marshes, a letter arrived. Not from them, but from a Savannah attorney, crisp envelope bearing the seal of Chatham County. Harper's hand shook as she slid it open, Riley hovering like a sentinel. Inside, a summons. The Ellis Family Trust contested. Thomas had filed papers from a P.O. box in Montana, claiming Harper's lifestyle choices invalidated her inheritance. The words blurred, a fresh wound reopening the old. Montana, Harper breathed, the name evoking vast skies and unyielding earth, a world away from the humid embrace of home. Riley's eyes flashed with that Portland fire. "Then we go. We face it. Not for the money, for the truth they owe you." Harper nodded, the decision settling like the first cool drop after drought. Packing was ritual. Eleanor's rosary beads for courage, Lydia's faded mixtape for the road, Thomas's pocket knife for cutting ties if needed. As they loaded the Jeep under gathering clouds, Harper paused at the porch swing, pressing her palm to its weathered slats. "Goodbye," she murmured, not to the house, but to the girl who had waited for approval like manna. The drive north cut through the Appalachians, ribbons of highway twisting like veins through emerald veins. They stopped in Asheville for coffee at a bookstore cafe, the air thick with the scent of fresh pages and roasted beans. Riley bought Harper a worn copy of The Price of Salt, its spine cracked from countless journeys. "For the road," she said, her thumb brushing Harper's knuckles. In the Blue Ridge foothills they hiked to a overlook, the vista unfolding like a map of healing. Misted valleys cradling secrets, peaks piercing the clouds with defiant grace. Harper leaned into Riley, the wind carrying whispers of pine and possibility. I used to think love was a straight path, she confessed. But it's this winding wild, wearing you down until you're remade. Crossing into Tennessee, the landscape shifted to rolling hills dotted with farmsteads, tobacco barns leaning like weary elders. They lodged in a Gatlinburg cabin, its walls paneled in knotty pine that glowed amber in the firelight. That night, as rain pattered the tin roof, Harper unburdened the stories she had hoarded. The summer Lydia taught her to skip stones on the Neuse River, each bounce a lesson in persistence. Eleanor's midnight confessions after Thomas's long silences, her voice a thread of vulnerability. The way Thomas's eyes softened when he carved Harper's initials into the treehouse beam, a silent vow of protection. Riley listened, her presence a hearth, drawing out the embers of resentment into something softer. Understanding, perhaps the seed of forgiveness. By Knoxville, doubt crept in like fog off the Clinch River. What if they refused her? What if the truth was uglier than absence? Riley sensed it, pulling over at a roadside diner where neon flickered like hesitant stars. Over pecan pie and black coffee, she shared her own fracture. Parents who had disowned her after college, their letters curt with biblical condemnations. I built my life from the ashes, Riley said, her gaze steady. And you, Harper, you're the flame that keeps it from going cold. Their hands intertwined across the Formica table, a quiet oath renewed. The miles to Montana unspooled like a reel of forgotten film, through the stark beauty of Wyoming's Badlands, where wind-sculpted hoodoos stood as sentinels to isolation. Harper's heart quickened with each signpost. Bozeman 50 miles, Livingston 20. As if proximity could summon the ghosts. Riley drove the final stretch, her free hand a constant on Harper's thigh, grounding her against the vertigo of arrival. The Ellis family, it turned out, had sought refuge in a ranch outside Billings, a sprawling spread of sagebrush and cottonwoods purchased with Thomas's savings. The attorney's directions led them down a gravel lane flanked by rusted windmills, their blades creaking laments to the open sky. Dusk painted the horizon in strokes of rose and indigo as they parked before the modest farmhouse, its porch sagging under the weight of potted geraniums. Smoke curled from the chimney, a fragile sign of life within. Harper's pulse thundered, a storm in her veins. Riley squeezed her hand. I'm right here. Whatever the door opens to. The knock echoed like a verdict. Footsteps hesitant, then the door creaked open to reveal Lydia, thinner. Her once vibrant curls pulled into a severe knot, eyes shadowed with the same hollow Harper had seen in the mirror. Harper, she breathed, the name a bridge or a break. Behind her, Eleanor emerged from the kitchen, apron dusted with flour, her face a map of regret etched deep. Thomas lingered in the hall, his broad shoulders hunched, hands clasped as if in prayer. Silence stretched, thick as the mountain air, until Harper stepped forward, her voice a thread of steel wrapped in silk. You left me at the altar. Not just the wedding, the life we built. Why? Eleanor reached out, then faltered, her fingers twisting the apron's hem. We thought time would heal it. That distance would make it easier for you to move on. Thomas cleared his throat, his voice gravel rough. I couldn't stand by and watch you, damned girl. Not in my eyes. Lydia's gaze dropped. I tried to call. But Mom. She needed us here. The quiet. To pray it away. Riley stood sentinel at Harper's side. Her presence a quiet force, but she let the words flow unchecked. Harper's laughter came sharp, then dissolved into tears. Damned? By whose measure? The God who made the rivers that carve canyons, the stars that guide lost ships? You raised me to fight for what's right. Civil rights marches with Grandma Cora, letters to senators for equal pay. And now this, because I love her. She gestured to Riley, whose eyes glistened but held firm. The living room became a confessional under the flicker of a single lamp, its light pooling like spilled honey on the threadbare rug. They sat in a circle, uncomfortable armchairs and a sagging couch, passing a pot of chamomile tea that steamed with unspoken pleas. Eleanor spoke first, her words halting, of the church lady's whispers in Wilmington, the pastor's sermons on Sodom's fall that twisted her faith into knots. I saw you happy, Harper. With her. And it terrified me, not for you but for what it meant for us. For heaven. Thomas nodded, his carpenter's hands, scarred from years of shaping wood, unfolding like reluctant blooms. I built that treehouse for you and Lydia to dream big. But my dreams were small, forged in a time when men like me learned to bury what didn't fit. When you told us about Riley, it cracked me open. I ran because facing it meant admitting I'd failed you. Lydia leaned forward, tears tracing the lines of her face. I was angry at them, at myself. I wanted to stand with you, but family. It's a tide, Harper. It pulls you under if you fight alone. Her voice broke on a sob. I missed the wedding. Missed seeing you in that dress, the one with the lace like sea foam. Forgive me. Harper listened, the ache in her chest shifting. Not dissolving but alchemizing into something porous, breathable. Riley's hand in hers was a talisman, her thumb circling a slow rhythm of reassurance. Outside, the Montana night deepened, stars pricking the velvet sky like promises kept. I came for the truth, Harper said at last, her voice steadying. Not to drag you back, but to understand. Love isn't a ledger, balanced in approvals or inheritances. It's this, sitting in the mess, seeing each other raw. Hours unfurled into dawn's tentative glow, confessions weaving through the steam of refilled mugs. Eleanor recounted a dream that had haunted her flight. Harper as a child drowning in the Cape Fear, her small hand slipping from Eleanor's grasp. I let go again, she wept, afraid of the current. Thomas pulled a worn Bible from the shelf, its pages marked with passages on prodigal sons and forgiving debts. Maybe I'm the one returning, he murmured, meeting Harper's eyes for the first time without evasion. Riley spoke sparingly, her words measured as a poet's line. I know this fracture. My parents' silence was a wall I scaled alone. But Harper, she climbed for me, for us. That's the love that rebuilds. Her gaze swept the room, not accusatory but inviting. A door cracked to empathy's light. As the sun crested the Bridger Mountains, gilding the sagebrush in gold, tentative bridges formed. Lydia pulled Harper into the kitchen, where dough waited on the counter, biscuits, a recipe from their girlhood mornings. They kneaded in silence at first, flour dusting their joined hands. Then laughter bubbled as Lydia recounted a disastrous attempt at sourdough in hiding. It rose like my regrets, she quipped, and Harper's smile cracked through, genuine, warming. Thomas invited Riley to the barn, where half-finished furniture leaned like unfinished sentences. He handed her a chisel, guiding her hand over a oak plank. Wood bends before it breaks, he said, the lesson veiled but clear. Riley nodded, her strokes sure, the shavings curling like shed skins. Eleanor and Harper walked the fence-a-line, wildflowers nodding in the breeze, Indian paintbrush and lupin, bursts of crimson and violet against the endless green. I kept your letters, Eleanor confessed, pulling a ribbon-tied bundle from her pocket. Read them until the words blurred. You wrote of light in the dark, Riley's laugh like summer rain. I see it now, in her eyes on you. By midday the air hummed with fragile normalcy. A shared lunch of venison stew and cornbread, stories overlapping like quilt patches. Harper felt the wound's edges knit. Not seamless but strong enough to hold. Forgiveness wasn't absolution, she realized. It was the choice to tend the garden despite thorns. Yet shadows lingered. The trust papers sat unsigned on the table, a specter of division. Thomas broached it awkwardly over coffee. It's not about the land, Harper. It's principle, the old ways. She met his gaze, unflinching. Principles evolve, Dad. Like rivers carving new paths. Sign it or don't. But know this. My life with Riley isn't negotiable. He did, pen scratching like a reluctant confession, the document a small surrender. Lydia hugged Harper fiercely, then whispering, come back to Wilmington. Or let us come to you. Portland sounds cold, but your heart's always been warm enough for us all. The drive south the next day carried a different weight, lighter, laced with plans. Riley and Harper detoured through Yellowstone, steam rising from geysers like Earth's exhaled grief, bison grazing in meadows that stretched to infinity. At Old Faithful's eruption, water arcing skyward in faithful rhythm, Harper turned to Riley. The mist beating on their skin like tears turned soft. You brought me here, she said. Not just to them, to myself. Riley's smile was the sun breaking through cirrus veils. We brought each other. Always. Back in North Carolina, the Ellis home welcomed them with open arms. Porch swing repaired by Thomas's pre-flight hands, roses blooming defiant against the trellis. Lydia arrived a week later, suitcases in tow, ready to reclaim her room and the gallery job she had lined up in town. Eleanor followed, her Bible now annotated with verses on love's boundless forms, her hands eager for the kitchen's familiar rhythm. The wedding redo was simple. No grand chapel, just a sunset gathering on Wrightsville Beach. Barefoot in white linen, Harper and Riley exchanged rings forged from coastal silver, waves lapping at their toes like applause. Family encircled them, Thomas's eyes misty, Eleanor's hand in Lydia's, Finn's camera capturing the light as it danced on the water. Vows flowed like the tide. Promises of patience in storms, laughter in lulls, hands held through the unknown. As stars emerged, pinpricks of constancy, Harper glanced at her family, their faces illuminated by bonfire glow. Scars remained, faint lines on the heart's map, but they traced a path to here, to this circle of reclaimed souls. Love, she understood, wasn't the absence of pain, but the courage to return, to face the dawn together. In the years that followed, the Ellis Donovan home became a confluence. Southern drawls mingling with Pacific cadences, Montana visits threading through Wilmington summers. Harper's clinic expanded, her work a testament to mending what society fractures. Riley's photography book, Bridges Unbuilt, chronicled their journey in sepia tones and candid truths, its pages a balm for others adrift. And on quiet evenings as fireflies danced once more across the lawn, Harper would swing on the porch with Riley, the world a gentle sway. We faced the vanishing, she'd say, her head on Riley's shoulder, and found the light that never left. The end came not with fanfare, but with the soft insistence of seasons turning. Harper, at 42, stood on that same dock where the image of her younger self had etched into memory, auburn hair now threaded with silver, green eyes deepened by wisdom's patina. The Cape Fear murmured below, its waters carrying echoes of storms weathered, bridges mended. Riley approached from the path, basket in hand, wild magnolias, their petals unfurling like forgiven secrets. They're coming, Riley said, nodding toward the approaching figures. Eleanor, slower now but steady, arm linked with Lydia's, Thomas trailing with his carved cane, a smile creasing his lined face. The family had gathered for Harper's milestone, a quiet renewal of sorts, vows whispered not just to each other, but to the life rebuilt from ruins. As they embraced on the dock, the sun dipped low, gilding the river in liquid amber. Laughter rose, mingled with the gulls' calls, a symphony of return. Harper looked out over the horizon, where purple bruised into gold, and felt the final threads of ache dissolve, not erased but transformed into gratitude, into grace. In that light, love stood revealed. Not a cure, but a companion through the dark, drawing all toward the warmth of truth embraced. And as the stars began their vigil, Harper knew the vanishing had been but a detour, leading inexorably to the shore of wholeness.